My name is Jasmine Osei. I'm 28 years old. And I need to tell you about the year I built something real from nothing, watched my family take credit for it at every gathering, and then discovered, when it burned down, that the credit takers had evaporated completely. The thing I built was a small business. A catering company specializing in West African and fusion cuisine, which I started in Atlanta at 24 with $3,000 I'd saved over 2 years, a commercial kitchen I rented by the hour, and a set of recipes I had been developing since I was 16 years old, standing next to my grandmother in a kitchen in Accra. My parents, Kofi and Akosua Osei, are Ghanaian immigrants who came to Atlanta in the 90s and built genuinely stable lives through decades of hard work. My father is an engineer. My mother is a pharmacy technician. The values they raised me with were a version of what many immigrant parents of their generation hold: work harder than everyone, prove yourself constantly, do not complain, and succeed in ways that are visible. Visible. That word matters. Success in my family was always public. My mother called relatives in Ghana when I graduated high school, college, when I got my first real job. The pride was real. But there was also a performative quality I only noticed once the performance was directed at my business. Once I started the catering company, my parents developed a habit of mentioning it at every family gathering, every community event, every church function. Jasmine's company became a talking point. My mother said, more than once in my presence, that they had always believed in me and their support had given me the foundation to build this. My father mentioned they had taught me discipline and work ethic. These statements were not entirely false. But they were performing a contribution that had not, in any practical sense, been provided. My parents had not invested in my business. They had not co-signed my equipment loan. They had not provided startup capital or connections in the catering industry. What they had provided were genes and a childhood and the work ethic they mentioned, real, but a description of parenting rather than business investment. I did not say any of this at the gatherings. I smiled when they talked about my business. I said yes, my parents were very supportive. I said it the way you say things when the cost of accuracy is higher than the cost of letting the inaccuracy stand. The business grew. By year 2, a small regular client base, a reputation in the Atlanta events market, a part-time assistant named Tanya who was worth 3 times what I could afford to pay her, and a deep sense of pride that sat separate from the family narrative. The business was mine. Whatever they said at church, the kitchen hours were mine, the phone calls were mine, the 3 a.m. batch cooking and the impossible logistical puzzles, mine. Then, in year 3, I hit a wall. A major contract that fell through at the last minute. A piece of equipment that failed during a large event. The resulting reputation damage. A cash flow problem that snowballed faster than I could contain it. I worked 20-hour days for 6 weeks trying to stabilize. I lost weight. I stopped sleeping properly. I watched something I had built with my hands begin to come apart. I asked my parents for a loan. Not a gift. A loan, documented, with repayment terms. $30,000 to bridge the gap while I restructured. My father said he didn't have that much liquid. Which was partially true and partially a choice. My mother said she believed in me, but she wasn't sure throwing money at a struggling business was wise. She suggested I talk to a business advisor. I had 3 business advisors. I had been running a business for 3 years. I knew what I needed. What I needed was $30,000 and the people who had been standing in front of communities performing their contribution to my success to actually contribute something. They didn't. And here is the specific cruelty of that. My mother still talked about my business at church. While I was drowning, trying to save something real and necessary to me, she was still saying Jasmine's company at community functions. The story she told about her family still included my business as an asset. The collapse, which I was living in real time, had not reached her version of events. Have you ever been struggling so deeply that it changed the landscape of your life, and had the people closest to you continue operating in a version of your life where the struggle didn't exist? It is a specific kind of loneliness. A loneliness inside visibility. The business did not survive. I closed it after a 6-month attempt at restructuring. The right decision, made with clear eyes and genuine grief. I wrote to my clients. I paid my final bills. I dissolved the entity completely. Then I sat in my apartment for 3 days and let myself feel the loss in full. My parents found out through a combination of my telling them and someone at church telling them first. My mother called. She said, "Why didn't you tell us you were closing?" I said, "I told you I was struggling." "That was me telling you." She said she hadn't realized it was that serious. I asked her what level of seriousness was required to trigger genuine support. I asked at what point the struggling daughter who asked for a loan became serious enough to override concern about throwing money at a struggling business. I asked these questions quietly, without screaming, because I was tired. My mother went quiet. Then she said something I have thought about many times. "I was afraid if we helped and it still failed, you'd blame us." She had been more concerned with protecting herself from a future blame than with helping me in a present crisis. She had made a calculation, conscious or not, that the emotional cost of participating in a failure was higher than the cost of withholding from a struggle. I told her, "Mom, I needed you to try. Not succeed. Just try. That's all I needed." She cried. I think it was real. I think she understood, in that moment, what she had chosen. Recovery came. I found a position as a culinary operations manager for a restaurant group, real work, good pay, skills that fit precisely what I developed in 3 years of running my own operation. The business hadn't failed. It had been a 3-year advanced degree in the industry I wanted to work in, and the industry eventually paid me for what I'd learned. My parents were proud when I told them about the new job. My mother called relatives. My father mentioned my experience at the next family gathering. I listened to them describe my resilience in public and felt the full shape of the arrangement. Successes, performed. Failures, absent from the narrative. This has always been the deal. I had a conversation with my mother that was long overdue. I told her I was glad she was proud of me. I told her she needed to understand that pride without presence is not the same as support. That claiming a stake in my success while being unavailable in my struggle was a kind of relational fraud, not malicious, but real. She listened. She said she knew she had let me down. She said she had wanted to believe the business would turn around on its own and had used that hope as a reason not to act. She said that was cowardly and she knew it. My father said, a week later, that if I ever started another business, he would be there differently. He said it simply, without fanfare. Those are usually the true ones. I am 28 years old. I run a culinary operations team. I am planning another venture for next year, smaller and smarter, built with better support infrastructure, including, this time, an honest conversation with my family about what support actually looks like before any launch, not after any crisis. I want to tell you something about families that celebrate your wins loudly and disappear in your losses. They are not evil. But they are in a relationship with your performance rather than with you. And performing for people who leave when the performance gets complicated is the loneliest possible use of your talent. Find the ones who stay for the mess. Build with them. Let them see the hard parts. And the ones who show up only for the highlight reel? Let them watch from a distance. The highlights will still be there. But now, when my mother calls someone at church to tell them about Jasmine, I know something she doesn't always admit out loud: those successes belong to me. I built them while she was doing other things. The credit has a correct address. And I live there now. Thank you for watching.